Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala Rasulillahi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Azhar Zaidi, and inshallah I will be coordinating or hosting this webinar. The title of this webinar is Preparing for the 10 days of Dhul-Hijjah, which starts next week. First of all, thank you very much for taking the time on this Sunday morning or Sunday at noon and joining this webinar. We hope that it will be useful to you, especially given what we can do to earn Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's favor in these 10 days of Dhul-Hijjah. Not that we're not going for Hajj this year, but there are other ways of earning the favor of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this described as the 10 best days of the year. We have, inshallah, Mufti Hussain Kamani with us to speak to us about this topic. The duration of the speech would be approximately 30 minutes, inshallah. We will also have Q&A session at the end of the webinar, and we'll take that up. So if you have any questions, hold on to it. It might be answered in the course of the presentation. If not, you can always put your questions in the Q&A folder. Please don't put them in the chat folder. Put them in the Q&A folder, and inshallah we'll take that up. So bear with us with patience. Inshallah, we'll see if we can get Mufti Kamani to come online, and we'll have him speak to us soon, inshallah. Here he is. Alaikum, Sheikh Hussain Kamani, are you online? Can you speak?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Can you guys hear me? Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum, Mufti Hussain Kamani.
Can you hear me?
Sheikh Kamani, can you speak?
Assalamu alaikum. Can you hear me? Assalamu alaikum. Testing. Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum.
Yeah, I can see you.
Can you see me?
You're not muted.
I'm not sure the problem is. Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum.
Hello. No, it's the same link. I've already promoted him to a panelist, but at least he can speak, right? Okay, we'll work on that. Let him speak, inshallah. Can you please let him speak right now? It's already 10 minutes past. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum. Can you guys hear me now?
We can't hear you.
Is that a yes?
We can't hear you. We can see you, the video.
You can't
Is
hear
your
me.
mute? Are you muted?
No, I'm not muted.
No?
Microphone is right. Okay, so someone is saying they can hear me. That's good. Okay, that's good. Can others just confirm they can hear me too, if you don't mind? I'm able to hear both of you. Okay, perfect. That's great. We are good. Brother Zaidi, do you want to? Are there any introductory comments you'd like to make before we start?
Go ahead. Go ahead, please.
Okay. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah wa kafa wa salamun ala ibadihi alladhina istafa. خصوصا على سيد الرسل وخاتم الأنبياء وعلى آله الأزكياء وأصحابه الأتقياء أما بعد. Alhamdulillah, thumma alhamdulillah, we thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala again and again for giving us the blessing of witnessing the month of Dhul-Hijjah, which is just days away from today. Potentially Tuesday, Wednesday, we could be in the month of Dhul-Hijjah, which is just a few days away from us. The amazing thing about the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the number of opportunities Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us to pick up for the slack that we sometimes fall into, some of the weak points, some of the down times of the year. And so we have so many beautiful opportunities like this throughout the year. The month of Dhul-Hijjah in the Islamic calendar is the last month of the year. So it's kind of like the December. And as the year wraps up, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam tells us of the great virtue that lies in Dhul-Hijjah. Now, there are a couple of things to discuss. The first thing is how Dhul-Hijjah is the month in which people perform Hajj. This year, many of us won't be able to make it this year because of the current circumstances. Many people had gone for Hajj for decades straight, and it's this year that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put a stop to that. And I think there's a beauty even in the not going to Hajj, so that it creates a longing, a yearning, a desire. And it reminds us that we don't do things just because of sequence, because we were doing them as it was. It's a reminder to us all that even though we think that we are in control and we have it all figured out, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who truly writes our taqdeer, and He is the one that allows us to follow through on whatever good it is that we intend to do. And that's what we call tawfiq, divine inspiration, divine perspective. The ability to do good comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَمَا تَوْفِيقِي إِلَّا بِاللَّهِ. That my tawfiq only comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. حَسْبِيَ اللَّهُ وَنِعْمَ الْوَكِيلُ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is enough for me. Many of you may have planned to go for Hajj this year, as I did. And these are the days that people would be leaving for Hajj normally. These are the days that we would be giving our final regards to our family members before boarding a flight out to Haramain. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala this year pulled us back from going. And there is a khair, there's good in this. Obviously, it sucks not to go. There's no question about that. It definitely does feel hard on the heart. It's not easy. There is sorrow because there was so much excitement about Hajj. There was so much preparation, so much anticipation. But then circumstances dictated otherwise, and so did the taqdeer of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Just because we aren't going for Hajj this year doesn't mean that an amazing opportunity isn't in front of us. And I pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that the sorrow that we feel, the grief and pain that we feel on not being able to go Hajj this year becomes a means of our salvation in the hereafter, and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rewards us immensely for the patience. Now, the month of Dhul-Hijjah is a special month. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam tells us that these first 10 days of Dhul-Hijjah, the first 9 days specifically, are very special. They're very unique. They are days that are very, that can offer you so much. They carry so much virtue. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam had some unique practices that he would engage in during these 10 days of Dhul-Hijjah, during these 9 days specifically of Dhul-Hijjah. And we will come to that. One thing that I want to discuss and briefly touch on before we go to the first days of Dhul-Hijjah is why this month is special. What is it that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is reminding us in this month? Because whatever it is that we are reminded of in this month connects very well to the pilgrimage of Hajj. And the summary of that can be stated as trust Allah and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will take care of your affairs. Complete reliance on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. An Abrahamic way of life. إِذْ قَالَ لَهُ رَبُّهُ أَسْلِمْ قَالَ أَسْلَمْتُ لِرَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told Ibrahim alayhi salam to submit, he said, I submit to the Lord of the worlds. And this is what we see in the life of Ibrahim alayhi salam. Someone who is mentioned in multiple places in the Quran, who was a great inspiration for the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam. قَدْ كَانَتْ لَكُمْ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ فِي إِبْرَاهِيمَ. That in the example of Ibrahim alayhi salam, there is a beautiful role model. There's a beautiful example for you. There's a reason why Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, when teaching the companions salawat, he taught them to say, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad, kama sallayta ala Ibrahim. There's a reason why he said that. There was something special about Ibrahim alayhi salam. There was something very unique about the example and life of Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam. Let's reflect over that, because his life is what Hajj is, more or less. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands us to leave our lives and live the footsteps of Ibrahim alayhi salam for these 5 days of Hajj. And it's full of sacrifice. That's who Ibrahim alayhi salam was. Full of struggle. That's who Ibrahim alayhi salam was. A very generous man. That's who Ibrahim alayhi salam was. Truly trusting in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whether things were going good or whether apparently they were going tough. They weren't going too well. He still trusted Allah Azza wa Jal. And every time he trusted Allah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala showered his mercy upon him in ways that are so phenomenal. They're so powerful. I mean, you start right from the beginning, where Ibrahim alayhi salam is struggling to convey Islam to even one person. His own father isn't on his side. That's where he is. His own father is threatening him. لَإِن لَمْ تَنْتَهِ لَأَرْجُمَنَّكَ وَهْجُرْنِي مَلِيًّا. That his father says to him, if you don't stop, I will stone you. His father is arguing with his son, and the son is speaking back to the father. And I say arguing and speaking back because the father was very aggressive, and the Quranic verses clearly draw that picture out. And Ibrahim alayhi salam is very calm, very patient, very loving with his father, because he's a prophet of Allah. He doesn't lose his cool. If you look at the way Ibrahim alayhi salam addresses his father while they're in the middle of their dialogue, he uses language like, Ya abati. Anyone know what Ya abati means? Any idea what Ya abati means, folks? I'm looking in the chat box if anyone has any comments on this phrase, this word that Ibrahim alayhi salam uses again and again when speaking to his father. Rana says, my beloved father. Yeah, I love it. Munib, dear father. Exactly. It's not just my father, it's Ya abati. That Ya abati is a very compassionate, loving way of addressing his father, even though his father is threatening him, even though his father is being very aggressive and borderline abusive with him. But he keeps saying, Ya abati, Ya abati, Ya abati, with such love and compassion. And you'll see this, that Ibrahim alayhi salam shows this love to his father. And later on in his life, when Ibrahim alayhi salam approaches his own son and tells him that I saw a dream that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands me to sacrifice you, how does Ismail alayhi salam respond to his father? That's a question. What language does he use? I mean, if my father said to me, I'm going to slaughter you or sacrifice you, I'd run for the phone. If I didn't have a phone, I'd get on whatever vehicle I had and I would get away from him, because I would feel that he is threatening my life. But Ismail alayhi salam saw the quality of his father. He knew what kind of person he was. And even in such a difficult situation that his father puts him in. See, one thing is you take on a challenge yourself. Ibrahim alayhi salam had done that multiple times. But then there are times where you take on the challenge with your family. You don't walk that path alone. You walk with the people around you. And you motivate them. You encourage them. You prepare them. And Ismail alayhi salam, when his father says to him, "Inni ara fil manami anni adbahuka fanzur madha tara," that I saw myself sacrificing you. So what is your opinion? He says to his father, "Ya abati, if'al ma tu'mar." You see that common language? Ya abati, ya abati, if'al ma tu'mar. O my father, O my dear beloved father, do as you are commanded. Satajiduni insha'Allah min as-sabirin. Very soon you will find me from those that are patient. He saw his father living a life of patience, and now he says to his father, I will follow your example. And if you are patient, then I will be patient too today. So we go back to the life of Ibrahim alayhi salam and we study it, and we find that there was no test that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put him through, but he was patient. When the people are launching him into the fire because of his act of destroying the idols in their place of worship. At that time, he says, Hasbi Allah wa ni'mal wakil, that Allah is enough for me. And he is the best wakil. Wakil could be a friend, wakil could be a representative, an ally, all of this, right? Wa ni'mal wakil, and the best ally. Hasbi Allah wa ni'mal wakil. And he's being launched into the fire. The narrations say that it was in that moment that he was being launched into the fire that Jibreel alayhi salam came to him and said, that is there anything that we can do for you? And he said to Jibreel that from you I wish nothing, but I rely on Allah. Allah will take care of me. He was on an iman high at that moment, that he was directly speaking to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. His hope was in Allah. His thoughts were caught with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in return, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us what happened. قُلْنَا يَا نَارُ كُونِي بَرْدًا وَسَلَامًا عَلَى إِبْرَاهِيمَ. That we said, O fire, be cool and be peaceful for Ibrahim. Not just cool, because too cold can be painful too. But cool and peaceful, both of them. كُونِي بَرْدًا وَسَلَامًا عَلَى إِبْرَاهِيمَ. Be cool and peaceful for Ibrahim alayhi salam. Fire which is made to burn loses its ability because of the command of Allah, and that command of Allah comes because Ibrahim alayhi salam passes every test of Allah, and now he invokes Allah's mercy. Allah's mercy will always be directed at his friends. This is the lesson that we learn. We don't just ask for miracles. Ibrahim alayhi salam, he walked the talk. He lived that life. And even though people may not launch us into fires in our life, we may not be literally thrown into a fire, but there are the moments in our life where we feel the world is closing in on us and we feel lonely. The people are standing against us. And at times like that, you must turn back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the legacy and the story of Ibrahim alayhi salam. This is what we learn from his life. Never break that bond between you and your Creator. No matter what people say, no matter how much people tell you you aren't worth Allah's mercy, the reality is they are the fools. As long as you love Allah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy will always be there. Now, so you may ask, why am I sharing this story? Because the first 10 days of Dhul-Hijjah are a preparation for Eid. And that story of Eid is a reenactment of a sacrifice, one of the many sacrifices of Ibrahim alayhi salam's life. It's all connected. If someone tells you that you must sacrifice animals and you must fast and you must not cut your nails and you must do a lot of dhikr, and tells you that the time is virtuous, but there's no understanding of why the virtue exists, then it's difficult to connect. The Quran could have just told us to fast in Ramadan, but the Quran says, Shahru Ramadan alladhi unzila fihi al-Quran. The Quran tells us why the month of Ramadan is special. The month of Ramadan is special because this is the month in which the Quran was revealed. And similarly, Dhul-Hijjah is special because it carries the pilgrimage of Hajj in it. And that's why Eid is there, because we are sacrificing animals. Just as the Hujjaj are shaving their heads on the 10th of Dhul-Hijjah, just as the people performing Hajj on that day are sacrificing their animals, we are also sacrificing our animals. But why is all the sacrificing happening? What's the story? What's the legacy? How do we really connect with the ritual? Where does the spiritual come into this? And that comes through studying that life of Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam. We see it again in his life when he is commanded by Allah to leave his wife Hajar and his son Ismail in the middle of the desert. Difficult moment. I mean, I drop my wife off to the mall, and if her phone is dead, I freak out. How is she going to contact me? Where am I going to pick her up? How am I going to know everything's okay? What if they need something? In particular, if there's a child with her, makes it even more difficult. Makes it that much more difficult. Ibrahim alayhi salam is dropping off his wife and his son. And she protests to him. She says, where are you going? In the middle of this desert, there's no one here, not another soul. And Ibrahim alayhi salam points to the heavens, and she says that if Allah has Allah commanded you of this, and if Allah has commanded you, la yudayyu'una, then He will not waste us. And the famous story of Zamzam then takes birth from this incident. People then see water and they move there. Later on, Ibrahim alayhi salam, he builds the Kaaba there with his son Ismail alayhi salam, and that becomes a center. And the interesting thing about the Kaaba is that the Kaaba that we visit today, and hundreds of thousands and millions of people throughout the year that perform tawaf of that Kaaba, Ibrahim alayhi salam didn't live long enough to see those millions of people coming to that Kaaba. He didn't see that. He built the structure as Allah commanded him, and then the reward came later on. After he had left the world then came together to perform pilgrimage of that Kaaba. Now, the last incident that I'm going to indicate towards, because this connects very well with the 10th of Dhul-Hijjah, which we commonly refer to as Eid al-Adha, is the incident of the sacrificing of Ibrahim alayhi salam. And this basically, in a nutshell, Ibrahim alayhi salam sees a dream. He consults his son. What should we do? His son agrees. Let's carry out the dream. He lies his son down to sacrifice him. And from the heavens, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends an animal. And that animal is then sacrificed. So following this legacy of Ibrahim alayhi salam, every year in Dhul-Hijjah, on that 10th day specifically, there is a day of Eid that we celebrate. And that day is a day that we celebrate by sacrificing animals. Ibrahim alayhi salam was sacrificing his son. That's where the journey started. Later on, وَفَدَيْنَاهُ بِذِبْحٍ عَظِيمٍ, the animal came from the heavens. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala could have asked us to sacrifice anything. And whatever He would have asked us to sacrifice, it would have been our responsibility to sacrifice that. That would have been our obligation. But again, the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is such that He didn't test us with our families. Not all of us, if any of us, had that iman to be tested in our family. That's a whole different ballgame. It's a whole different ballgame. Go and ask someone who's struggling with a child or a spouse or a nephew. It's not easy. I've heard mothers saying stuff like, I wish Allah had tested me instead. I'm not sure if that's a good statement to make, but it's just thing that it's very difficult being tested in your family. So when that 10th of Dhul-Hijjah comes, we sacrifice animals. The sacrificing of the animal is obligatory upon every individual whose zakat is obligatory on. So if you give zakat, if you have nisab and you give zakat, you should also be sacrificing an animal. And now there's a lot of fiqh related to the sacrificing of animals. I won't go into that. I want to dedicate now some time to the first 10 days of the Hijjah and some acts to do. So the first thing, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam told the companions that there are these first 10 days of the Hijjah hold special virtue. He sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, as narrated by Imam Bukhari rahmatullahi alayhi and also by Imam Tirmidhi rahmatullahi alayhi, along with others, there are no days in which actions are more beloved to Allah than these days, referring to the 10 days of the Hijjah. The companions asked, O Messenger of Allah, not even jihad in the path of Allah? To that, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, not even jihad in the path of Allah, unless, except a person who goes with his life and wealth but does not return with anything, meaning he is actually martyred in the battlefield. Similarly, we see in Surah Al-Fajr, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَالْفَجْرِ وَلَيَالٍ عَشْرٍ, and by the dawn, and then Allah takes an oath by layal ashar, the 10 blessed nights. And the Mufassirun have said that these verses, this verse in which Allah is referring to 10 blessed nights is referring to the 10 nights of Dhul-Hijjah. So how can we benefit from these days? Number one, try your best to fast during these first 9 days of Dhul-Hijjah. You cannot fast on the 10th day, okay? Because that's the day of Eid. If you can't fast all 9 days, then the ulama recommend to fast on the 9th of Dhul-Hijjah, which coincides with the day of Arafah. Fasting on the 9th of Dhul-Hijjah. Now, which date that will be exactly, we'll find out in a few days. Once the 1st of Dhul-Hijjah is announced, and we'll know when the 9th of Dhul-Hijjah is. What else can be done during these days? So the truth is that there isn't anything specifically allocated that this is an action that needs to be done. But yet again, the ulama have recommended that any good deed that you desire, that you enjoy doing, engage in it. So this is a time for us to pull out our Quran again. Like we had in Ramadan, pull out your Quran and start reading your Quran. This is a time for us to be more punctual on our salah. Fix it. You know, if you're praying quick, slow it down. If you're praying towards the end time of salah, put an end to that. Start praying when salah time starts. You should know when the beginning minute of each prayer is, where you live, and pray salah according to that. In particular, if you're at home in self-quarantine, then it's that much more important that you do it, because the distractions are minimal. It's not like we're outside or we're at a park or we're gone out to eat with the family or doing our groceries. I mean, that happens, but for the most part, we're at home. Therefore, it's so much more easier to pray salah in the awwal waqt, in its earlier time. So work on perfecting your salah. That includes reading salah in a more complete form. So many of us, our salah is a quick rush through the obligation, the 2 rakat of Fajr, the 4 rakat of Dhuhr, the 4 rakat of Asr, and so on. This is a time for us to add the sunan in. Don't just pray 2 rakat of Fajr Farad, add another 2 rakat before that, which was also the habit of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Another thing that you should add to your schedule, the third thing you can say, is increase your dhikr, salawat, istighfar, and dua. Dhikr, which means remembering Allah. Salawat, which means sending your regards to Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, making dua for his that Allah sends salutations upon him, that Allah sends peace upon him, that Allah blesses him. Allahumma salli wa sallim wa barik ala Sayyidina Muhammad. There are many different forms of sending salawat. The third is istighfar, repenting to Allah abundantly. Astaghfirullah, or any similar statement that you prefer. And the fourth is dua. Increase your dua. Make more dua to Allah Azza wa Jal. If it's hard for you to keep up with a schedule of doing dua, reading Quran, and so on, allocate a time in the day. That's the best thing. Maybe half an hour before Maghrib is when you sit down, read Quran for 10 minutes, do dhikr for 10 minutes, do dua for 10 minutes. You've locked in a time, something practical, something very real. And hold yourself accountable. It's only 9 days. It's only 9 days. It's easily accomplishable for one who desires it. The next point is, in addition to building yourself, make this a family event. Do it together as a family. Get people involved at home. You know, this might be a time for you to have that conversation with your family members that these next few days are days for us to cut back from the TV. It's time for us to read some hadith together, have a daily Quran gathering at home where we sit together and we read Quran. I also discussed fasting during the first 9 days of the Dhul-Hijjah, and the narration of Sahih Muslim tells us that after Ramadan, the best fast of the year is the fast of Arafah, which is the 9th of the Dhul-Hijjah. So definitely look out for that. The next point is be careful of engaging in sins, because on one side, if you're building yourself up to doing good and trying to work on your spirituality, but at the same time, then you engage in backbiting, engage in haram, looking at haram, listening to haram, eating haram, and so on, it kind of depletes the good that you've developed. So create a balance in yourself and hold yourself accountable. There is a narration in which we learn that for a person who intends to sacrifice an animal on the day of Eid, whether you're doing it yourself or you're having someone else sacrifice on your behalf, maybe somewhere else in the world you're doing it. If you are planning on sacrificing an animal, then from the first of the Hijjah until the animal is sacrificed, it's better to avoid trimming your nails and cutting your hair. And then on the 10th of the Hijjah, before you go for your Eid and as your animal is sacrificed, you can then go back to grooming yourself as normal. Okay, so that's a small little legal ruling in between, just for those who wish to benefit. So in summary, my dear friends, the month of Dhul-Hijjah is here. Many of us have sorrow in our heart because we thought this Dhul-Hijjah was going to be different, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had something different stored for us. Just because we aren't at Hajj doesn't mean we can't make the most of it. In order to make the most out of these days that lie ahead of us, it's important that we get perspective. And the best perspective is understanding the legacy of Ibrahim alayhi salam. And then seeing how Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam translated that into his life. And how the ulama recommend increasing our ibadah. We covered a list of things that can be done. I encourage you to push yourself this year. Take yourself to a new height. Go to a new level. Don't go there alone. Go there with your family. Add whatever dhikr, ibadah that you can. Create a schedule in your day. Try to keep the fast. In particular, that fast of Arafah. And when the day of Eid comes, it's very likely, once again, that we'll be doing Eid at home. But these are days for us to do our takbirat. From the Fajr of the 9th of the Hijjah, according to the Hanafi madhab, we start the takbirat of Eid on the Fajr of the 9th of the Hijjah, and we go until the Asr of the 13th of the Hijjah. So that's 23 prayers we do takbirat for. We do them out loud after every prayer. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. La ilaha illallah, Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar, walillahil hamd. These are takbirat that should be read after every prayer. So with that, I conclude. I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows us to be from those who benefit from this great opportunity that lies ahead of us. And that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blesses us with energy, gives us tawfiq to carry ourselves the way we should carry ourselves. And that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepts all of our ibadat and allows us to return to His blessed home, to the city of Makkah Mukarramah. When I say blessed home, the Kaaba and the Baytullah, and to the city of Makkah Mukarramah, and to be visitors of the city of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam again and again. Wa sallallahu ta'ala ala Sayyidina Muhammad. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Mufti Hussain Kamani, barakallahu fikum. Jazakumullahu khair. We have some Q&A. But before I get to the Q&A, if you can just touch upon the requirement of not being able to trim the nails and so forth during the 10 days. Therefore, they ought to do it earlier than that. If you can comment on that, please.
Yeah, so we talked about in the talk that for a person who intends to sacrifice an animal, from the 1st of the Hijjah until the 10th of the Hijjah, you should avoid grooming yourself. Okay, the best approach should be that before the 1st of the Hijjah, which would be today, tomorrow, one of these days, go ahead and groom yourself to whatever necessity, whatever need you have based off of your own hygiene, and yourself. Take care of that grooming, because when the month of the Hijjah starts, it is recommended to avoid that. Wallahu a'lam.
Okay, brothers and sisters, if you have any questions, please use the Q&A folder. There is a question that I see on the Q&A folder. The question is, can we donate Qurbani amount to fight COVID-19 or other charities?
So there are some acts of worship that instead of there are some sadaqat, some donations or some financial contributions that are required of us in Islam, in which we can just give the money and that'll suffice. So for example, if I'm giving zakat, I can give that money to a cause and that'll suffice. But when it comes to the sacrificing of an animal, it's the act of sacrificing that needs to be done. So you can't give the equivalent money of that in replacement of the sacrifice. The sacrifice will be incomplete. It's the actual sacrificing that needs to be done. Wallahu a'lam bis-sawab.
Barakallahu feekum. Brothers and sisters, if you have any questions, please feel free to put it in the Q&A folder, and we will be happy to answer them. The first of Dhul-Hijjah, I believe the Saudi government is expecting to look for the new moon on Monday evening, so it's likely to start either Tuesday or Wednesday, just in case you wanted to know when it starts, which is why we scheduled this webinar on this weekend, so that you have ample opportunity to prepare for it, inshallah. The next question is, Assalamu alaikum wa alaikum assalam. Eid Takbirat starts on the Eid day, correct? This would mean the Maghrib of the 9th of Dhul-Hijjah?
Well, there's a difference of opinion on when the Takbirat of Eid start. Okay? Amongst the jurists, there's a difference of opinion on the issue. I stated the Hanafi position on the issue, which is that it starts after Fajr Salah on the 9th of Dhul-Hijjah, and then we read it for 23 prayers, which means all of 9th, all of 10th, 11th, 12th, so 5 prayers a day, that's 20. And on the 13th, we do it, last one is after Asr Salah, so that's 3 prayers that day, so that's 23 in total. Now, other fuqaha have different opinions. Some scholars, they say it starts on the morning of Eid. So they say that it starts after the Fajr Salah of the morning of Eid, and then it goes until the 13th Asr. While others say that it starts, like was mentioned, it starts after Maghrib Salah on the 9th. It starts after Maghrib Salah on the 9th because it's supposed to start at the beginning of the day of Eid, so they hold a position. Again, each one has their narrations. It's a lengthy discussion, it's a fiqh discussion, that it starts after Maghrib, and they'll only read it for one day, so it's one day only, right? So there are different opinions on the issue on when the Takbirat of Eid start. Wallahu a'lam bis-sawab.
Looks like there are no more questions. So once again, thank you, Mufti Hussain Kamani, for the short talk and a reminder for all of us. And thank you, brothers and sisters, for attending. This webinar is being recorded and it will be placed on Dar Islam's website /webinar. If I wish to follow Hanafi madhab, how to add in between du'as? Don't know whether the question is explainable or not, but if I wish to follow Hanafi madhab, how to add in between du'as on Arafah day?
How to add in between du'as? Add what?
Maybe how to ask du'as on the Arafah day.
Okay. How to ask on Arafah day? Now, if that's the question, I'll address that. Rana, if you have a way to adjust that question, if there's something that we're missing, feel free to drop that question in. So on the day of Arafah, we know that it's virtuous to make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As for what dua specifically to make, that's kind of your call. You know, the one dhikr that we know that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam taught the companions, he said the best dhikr that has been made on the day of Arafah by me or the prophet that came before me is the dhikr. Anyone know? Any guesses what it is? La ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lah. Lahul mulku wa lahul hamdu wa huwa ala kulli shay'in qadir. It's a very beautiful dhikr. It's powerful. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam taught us that this is something to do on that day. Rana saying takbirs and du'as and tahleel. Oh, I see what you're saying. So as you're doing dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the day of Arafah, which is one of the best things to dedicate your time to, making dua, in between, just throw in a tahleel. Tahleel is to say la ilaha illallah. Throw in the middle of it a takbir. Allahu akbar, la ilaha illallah, Allahu akbar, walillahi alhamd. You can throw that in the middle. But there's no particular sequence that you have to follow that I can do dhikr. I can do dua for 5 minutes, and then I have to say this 3 times, and then this 3 times, and that 2 times. That kind of sequence really isn't something that's established in the narrations. It's up to the person who's doing their dua. Fit it in where you feel comfortable and take it from there.
Barakallahu feekum. Question, what Why trimming nails and hair during the 10 days of Dhul-Hijjah not recommended? What is the significance of not doing these grooming activities?
Well, the idea is to, well, it's connected to the sacrifice. I'll try to explain it the best I can, inshallah. In essence, the reality is the sacrifice is the animal that we sacrifice, in reality, is a substitute for us sacrificing ourselves in front of Allah. Ibrahim alayhi salam originally went to sacrifice his son. And then in return, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him the animal. So during those days, as the days of Hajj approach, when we stay away from grooming, we are as if putting ourselves in that seat of sacrificing something for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We're sacrificing our beauty. Other scholars, they say the reason why that we avoid sacrificing, grooming during the first 10 days of the Hijjah is to do tashabbuh bil hujjaj. Tashabbuh bil hujjaj. Because the hujjaj, the hajis who are performing Hajj, they are in ihram. They are already in ihram or they are soon to be in ihram. And when a person's in ihram, they do not groom themselves. So tashabbuh means to imitate. It's as if you're trying to copy them, as if you're trying to imitate them, that you couldn't make it there, so you are imitating them. So there are both perspectives. One is it's in connection to the sacrifice, that you're just reflecting over how the animal will be sacrificed, but in the meantime, this is my sacrifice, Ya Allah. Or the second opinion, some scholars, they say it's to imitate the Hujjaj, that Ya Allah, they're performing Hajj, they're avoiding the grooming. I can't perform Hajj, but I will also avoid the grooming. Wallahu a'lam bis-sawab, and Allah knows best.
Barakallahu feekum. I think that's the end of all the questions. So brothers and sisters, this is being recorded and will be placed in Dar Islam's website /webinar. And okay, there's one more question. Is i'tikaf recommended?
There's no sahih hadith that mentions i'tikaf being recommended during the first 10 days of the Hijjah. I mean, you can do it if you want to, like anything. If your masjid allows it, if there is an opportunity to do it there, then go ahead. I'm not sure if it's the wisest thing to do right now, right? But it's not something explicitly stated in any hadith. Just keep that in mind.
So can I ask Mufti Kamani if you could just make a closing dua and we'll end this webinar?
Okay. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد كما صليت على سيدنا إبراهيم وعلى آل سيدنا إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد اللهم اغفر لنا ذنوبنا كلها دقه وجل سره وعلانية ما علمنا منه وما لم نعلم ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار ربنا هب لنا من أزواجنا وذرياتنا قرة أعين وجعلنا للمتقين إماما يا رب العالمين اللهم اشف مرضانا اللهم اشف مرضانا اللهم اشف مرضانا وارحم موتانا واختم بالصالحات أعمالنا اللهم إنا نسألك من خير ما سألك منه نبيك وحبيبك سيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم ونعوذ بك من شر ما استعاذ منه نبيك وحبيبك سيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم أنت المستعان وعليك البلاغ ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم وصلى الله تعالى على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين والحمد لله رب العالمين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.